So my name's Alan Milroy. I work for XL Catlin. XL Catlin is a large global insurance and reinsurance company. And when I say global, we insure something everywhere. I think we probably don't insure anything in Antarctica, but practically everywhere else we probably have something that we insure. And we tend to insure the really complex risks, the big industrial, commercial concerns that have a global footprint. My background is I was an underwriter for 25 years, underwriting these risks, so pricing and calculating the risks. And I'm not from a technology background, but I'm going to tell you about the journey that XL Catlin has been on with GIS. So our story started back in 2011. Now, 2011 was interesting for a number of reasons that we've kind of talked about today. 2011 was a lot of cat events went on in 2011. They're nothing new. They happen all the time. They've been happening for longer than, as long as the world's been spinning. But 2011 was different. 2011 was different because all of these events were kind of unusual. So we talked about supply chain, and if we've got examples here of Japan, earthquake and tsunami. The earthquake that happened in Japan was bigger than the science community said was possible. Tsunami occurred. There was obviously the impact to the Fukushima plant, which wasn't protected well enough because science believed that the seawalls were high enough to protect it. But what's interesting about supply chain was that there was a lot of automotive companies in Japan that an earthquake happened. They moved their production to their plants in Thailand, which then flooded. So there was a lot of knock-on effects. So again, the Thailand floods. Thailand floods was an unprecedented event. Thailand does flood, but it wasn't expected to that kind of scale. And the challenge around Thailand and with the insurance industry was that the insurance industry didn't really understand fully the supply chain impact of what was going on in Thailand. They didn't realize how much industry was in Thailand. And basically the upshot of the Thailand flood was that that there was a global shortage in hard drives around the world because there was a big concentration of that manufacture that happened in Thailand. Back to the Japanese earthquake, certain chips were created in Japan, which shut down plants in the US because those chips were only produced in that one plant in Japan that powered those particular cars. So a lot of things went on. Queensland floods, big floods that were unprecedented. A lot of tornado activity that happened in 2011. And the Christchurch earthquake, no one knew that the area around Christchurch was seismic. So in that kind of background, I mean, insurance is used to the unusual. That's what we do. That's what we insure. But we kind of had a multiple of surprises that happened then. We started thinking about how we looked at risk, how underwriters started to think, well, you know, maybe we need to go into more detail here when we're thinking about risk, and that was really where my role somewhat changed, and I got. And this was kind of the problem that I wasn't told to solve, but what are the other solutions that are out there? So we kind of moved from 2011, we moved to 2013, and I was looking for solutions. I knew that that we needed to look at location in a different way because we were really good at looking at the big picture because we insure millions of locations on the insurance side and probably 1 billion location on the reinsurance side. So at the top end, we were really, really sophisticated in terms of how we looked at risk. But when we were getting further down, we had great amount of information. The insurance industry is probably the originator of big data in terms of how much data they had, but how they actually commingled it from the guys in the field that were going to see sites to the underwriter looking at risk from the information they would receive from their channels, it needed a review. So in 2013, I went to a geospatial event in London and kind of was amazed at the potential of what GIS was. And I spent a year explaining to my industry actually what GIS stood for. I now spend time telling them what geospatial means, but I mean, we've moved on. But that was kind of the starting point, and it was, well, there's a potential for a solution of us kind of looking again at location in a different way, because I think our view of location had become a little bit foggy. In 2014, I employed an intern, and this guy intentionally was from outside the industry, and he gave me a really hard time. He was asking lots of questions, which I didn't. I had to do a lot of internal soul searching to actually think, how do you answer these questions? Because the industry is a very traditional industry. It's a very, very long old industry. And there's a lot of traditions that are built into that. There's a lot of innovation as well, but there's a lot of traditions that are built with it. And over time, that business changes, but it doesn't necessarily take in the full rounded picture of what's going on. And GIS was a point in case. So from that particular point, we started with our GIS system. Esri was very supportive, and Chris Keen's in the audience. He was very patient with us while we were asking a lot of questions, and things went on for a little while. But from day one, we were getting new spatial insights into the risks that we hadn't seen before, and we were doing them really fast. We could look at spatial exposures before. They were taking 2 weeks to get something back in an Excel spreadsheet that we might put onto Google Earth and do that. But now we were able to do things in an hour. And we'd be able to go back to the underwriter and say, look at this exposure in Christchurch. We've got all these data layers in there. You're able to look at all of this in very, very quick speed. All of a sudden, perception started changing really, really fast. We had lots of internal discussions. We had a lot of meetings. We had a lot of talk at very high level. And as was said earlier from one of my country patriots, that don't underestimate the value of showing things on the map, because I presented to some of the most senior people in the company, and these people can talk, and they've got loads of questions, and you put their locations, their portfolio on a map in front of them, silence. Never seen it before. I've never seen it. And this was the power of maps. We were going all the way through the organization, showing them of the power and the speed of the technology. And we were pushing an open door. All the time, we're pushing an open door. That doesn't mean it didn't take time, but it was pushing an open door. But GIS is a great tool, and we were doing things that there were two of us, and there still are two of us. But that wasn't really the vision of what we wanted to do. We wanted to get spatial information out to everyone. So location, as we've said, location is the core of what we're looking at. We had rediscovered location, but we needed to put location in the center. We then needed to get people looking and integrating with that location data. So whether those were talking to our clients, whether they're talking to cover holders, these are people that that underwrite on our behalf, whether we're reacting to claims, whether we're dealing with our internal staff, all of those things we wanted to put in one particular lens. And that's where we started creating apps. Again, this was a really dynamic element of the Esri platform. Before, we'd done everything on a desktop, or my intern had done everything on a desktop. I used to look at what he was doing and I still do. I look at what he's doing on the screen, I have no idea what he's doing. But I see what he develops. But we started developing apps. We started rolling out apps. And it was a way of giving the users a real insight into really what they were looking at. You get tons of information when you're an underwriter. You're juggling masses of information, whether there's supply chain information, insured's locations, business interruption information, claims information, it's endless. And that, you can imagine how many spreadsheets, how many Word documents, how many PDFs that is. It's massive, absolutely massive. So actually suddenly being able to turn the light on and saying, this is your risk, there's the map, there's the picture, there's the building. Don't underestimate it, is all I would say. So the first stage of this was really just to go out to build that app and then to get a proof of concept, because we had to sell it. So whilst we talked about all of the other type of natural events, flood was considered to be the one that was really the global event that just happens everywhere. It floods in the Sahara. Not very often, but it does. So we put together a proof of concept for 4 months. We got a number of underwriters together, and we said, look, this is a GIS tool. You can look at your locations. This is the flood layer, etc. Again, fantastic response. And it's great putting technology out, but you have to think about the user. And I considered myself to be the user because I've been doing it long enough. But there's still a difference between the guys that are using it day in, day out, and me. And the great answer that came back is this is something they wanted. This was a big changer for them. So move on to 2017. We were buying software. We were buying the software. We had a platform up and running in July, so we're nearly a year since we set that platform up. We put our first app out in August, and then, as we've mentioned, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Irma, the earthquake in Mexico City, and also the Californian wildfires. All of those happened. What a test. What a test to build. We've only just built the first app. Now we've got to build 5. We had to build them in 2 days. We were using, so we'd never done these before. We were using data from social media. We were using live video feeds from the street cameras in Houston. We were using aerial photography from NOAA. We were using all of this stuff. And it was phenomenal. It was a real game changer. And areas like the Caribbean, we had a lot of exposure in the Caribbean, were completely blacked out from these big hurricane events. We didn't know what was going on. And for us, we're the risk takers. We need to be able to quantify very quickly how bad it is. You can see the news of it, you can see the news feeds, but we needed to know how bad it was. So we developed the apps. We were able to get these out to our claims guys really quickly. They were able to start having proper, more in-depth conversations with the clients. And the industry we do is all about how we serve our clients. And when you have a big event like this, clients want certainty. Clients want you to come back to them and say, look, we're on it. This is what we're doing. This is what we're seeing. And this is what we were able to do. We would have had to wait weeks to get any idea of what was really going on the ground. So we've gone from the first apps. We now have 5 apps. We're now rolling out. I roll out the application in for North America on Thursday. We now have 250 users. When I did this presentation first with Matt, which was in February, we had 100. We now have 250. We expect that to probably double in another year. So it's really moving on really fast. All the time, the businesses are saying, well, we really get the spatial element of the business of the businesses that we run. Can you do this? We've had requests for looking at disease risks in sheep, which is a little bit different from what we were looking at before. You name it, we've been asked to look at things. If there's an insurance aspect to it, then we've been asked to do it. And the businesses see the real possibility, how it changes their perception of risk. So really just to close off, that's kind of says it. I mean, the environment is always changing. Nothing ever stands still. The businesses that we've talked about today, their business where it was a year ago is very different to the business it's in now. Insurers have to understand the changing business environment, the natural environment All of those things we have to understand as closely as we can. And Geospatial is giving us real new insights, and it's given us this insights at the speed. The world is going faster and faster. We need to be able to get in and get those insights out to make our underwriters make the right decisions and our claims guys to support our clients in a timely fashion. Thank you.